And hello, welcome. It's Sarah Chopra. I'm your host for the Gut Guru podcast. I know it has been a while. I think in the year 2020, I recorded perhaps maybe just a couple of episodes. And I'd like to proudly announce that I have resurrected. I've dusted off the old podcast cover and I have re-emerged. And if you might notice, or you might not notice, depending on how you're listening, but you can also watch this podcast now. So yes, I have recorded this a podcast on video. So this has been a big step for me because not only do I have to have the right lighting and everything like that, but I actually have to wash my hair. Well, I could not wash my hair, but I kind of feel like my appearance does need to be put up on that next level. So welcome if you are a new listener, and welcome back if you've been sticking around and waiting and wondering where I've gone to. Well, I've always been here. I haven't disappeared anywhere. I'm still doing my thing. And the reason why I decided to resurrect this lovely podcast that I created was because I was invited on a friend's podcast just recently. And when I finished the episode, I thought, oh my goodness, that was so much fun. What have I been doing? Why did I stop making episodes? And anyway, it's interesting how things turn out, and I decided it's time for me to get back on track and produce some lovely content and educate, inspire and motivate everyone that might be listening or watching this episode. So what's the episode about today? And you might have read the title. It is about your nervous system and why treating your nervous system is really important when you are addressing your gut health. And so the reason why I've decided to talk about this topic is because I've really been diving deep, I guess you could say, in the last 12 months in more of behavioural side of how we respond and react to our environment and how that can affect your health, how your behavior can affect your health. And if you don't know already, I'm currently a naturopath, and my beginnings started as a gut health specialist, especially in SIBO and IBS. And then that passion moved towards the brain-gut connection, where it's still my love is based, and developed very much into the mood and our mental health, especially since last year, how much that was impacted with everyone's mental health, and really letting people be aware about the whole brain-gut connection and how one influences the other, and how inflammation can occur in our mood, called also the inflamed brain, and more importantly, how the vagal nerve connects the two. And it's just this wonderful highway that sends information up and down to our brain and our gut. But actually 80% of the information actually comes from our gut up to our brain, and only 20% goes from our brain down to our gut. And I must, share that, a lot of my learnings over the last 12 months have come from Stephen Porges and Deb Dana and Barbara Rothschild. I think that's how you say her name. And really getting in touch with the polyvagal theory. And this was really just a game changer for me. So for those of you that are unaware, we have this autonomic nervous system, which is comes in our parasympathetic nervous system and our sympathetic nervous system. And now, so they're like this seesaw of one and the other. And our parasympathetic nervous system is used as descriptive as our rest and digest. It's our calming. It's our as it says, we're calm, our digestion is working effectively, our heartbeat is at a steady pace. And then you have the opposite side where it's sympathetic nervous system, and that's your fight or flight. And how, that's to do with your cortisol and adrenaline, and it sort of gets the heart pumping. And in some ways, the sympathetic nervous system gives us that drive. If you need to get up on the hill on a bike, it's the sympathetic nervous system that will reach you to the top. If you know you've got a project due for work or for school, it's sometimes that cortisol and the I've got to get this done. That's that driver that will help you complete that task. But often enough, we sometimes, as a modern day society, we're actually stuck in that fight or flight mode. So fight being, yep, you're ready, and that's, I'm going to do the task, or your flight where you flee the situation because you feel threatened as well. But there's that other element, the freeze element. And this is where Stephen Porges really expanded and explained the whole concept so much more clearly for me, especially, and that is the vagal nerve having that freeze element. So, and if you're watching the video, you'll be able to see me sort of demonstrating. But on your vagal nerve, and when it comes to your nervous system, you have three aspects. You've got your ventral vagal, which is part of your heart and your facial expressions, and is involved in the connection and feeling safe, and your creativity, and the community, and you learn, and you're more inviting and expansive and playful and joyful. And then you have your sympathetic nervous system, which is part of along your spinal cord, as part of your nervous system as well, your autonomic nervous system. I just mentioned it before, how that is your fight and flight. And then lower is your dorsal vagal. And that's been around, is the oldest part of your nervous system. And that part is where you may become sometimes fearful, and you disconnect. Perhaps isolation, you want to be alone, you introvert, the world can feel unsafe. And can feel big, and you almost, and there's that freeze element where you probably have seen on so many animal documentaries how the deer will go floppy, or even the mouse goes floppy when the cat has the mouse in its mouth. All of a sudden it will play dead, it will disconnect and disassociate itself, just to pretend that it's dead, and to not be part of that experience. And then when the threat is over, because the animal that is hunting, the cat or the lion is going to go, oh, well, this thing's dead, and then off it goes. And then the animal then all of a sudden will, just within a few seconds, snap back into life, shake off whatever it went through, it releases that energy, and will move as it releases the energy, and will move and flee from that situation. And I'd like to point out as well that sometimes that dorsal vagal can sometimes occur when we don't have that ability to flee a situation. So that's where that can occur as well. So that was a real game changer for me. So it's these three aspects, and Deb Dana has this lovely analogy of a ladder, and how we can move up and down. We're forever moving up and down. Like, when I mention the ventral vagal, everyone's like, oh yes, I want to be there. I want to be in that bit. I want to be in the top bit of the ladder. I want to be feeling expansive and safe. And yes, we do. Majority of the time, we do actually want to be in that area and that part of our vagal system. But you probably might have more attention and awareness as you might listen to this episode, that we're forever moving up and down the ladder. So sometimes that sympathetic system will come into play, where we need to fight. We're getting ready for action. We've got a task, or it can be even a mundane thing of answering an email or cooking dinner with all the kids at home, and they're all asking for things, or going supermarket shopping, or work commitments, school commitments, just anything that requires that extra energy. And so we can be in that sympathetic, a lot of the time during the day, where you might even notice that your heartbeat is racing, or you feel a little bit sweaty or hot. They're typical sympathetic nervous system aspects. And then you come into the dorsal, and that's where sometimes it's often associated with depression, where you just want to be by yourself. And sometimes, there is a difference between isolation and solitude. And solitude is very much in touch with, that you choose to be in solitude. You're valuing your personal space. You're valuing time by yourself. You're appreciating that time by yourself. It's a time for self-reflection. It can be a time of creativity. So solitude sometimes can be very much ventral as well, where so dorsal, when you're typically feeling withdrawn from society. So it's really about the nervous system having that safety and connection. And it's really important, I think, in the year of 2020, and it's still continuing, the pandemic, but it's been very evident that safety and connection, especially within your community and with others, has really diminished, because for depending on where you live, but the length of lockdown, and having to isolate yourself from not just your family, but even just the community, and if you happen to live by yourself and then working at home majority of the time, it can be very isolating, and there's not a lot of solitude in that. There's not a lot of choice in that. It's a have to. And so this is sort of an overview of how the nervous system operates. And dorsal, and that lower part of your ventral system, your vagal system, is very much associated with your digestion. So it can slow down, and constipation can occur, poor digestion. And with sympathetic as well, you can sometimes have that anxiety relation with that, and also that can sometimes even have that speeding up process where diarrhea may occur as well. So there are aspects to have a look at, and I'd really invite you to, after listening to this, just to check in with yourself throughout the day, or even different days of the week, because we sometimes do different things on different days, and notice when you are in those particular states, when you might be in ventral, when you might be in sympathetic, and when you might be in dorsal. And just notice where you are, who you're with, and what you're doing. Just really noticing that environment. And a lot of the time, when it comes to, you might be thinking, oh, actually my heart's racing, and I do want to flee. a lot of the time we can't do that. That might be, you might be going through a job interview, and even though you feel nervous and your heartbeat's racing and you really don't want to be there, it's a more of a feeling of expansion of your personal self. It's moving you towards your values of who you might want to be. This job that you're going for, that maybe the interview is making you feel nervous, is actually moving you towards the person and the life that you want to be. So that's always something that is also always good to reflect upon, is when we are challenged personally, is this a situation that is expansion of, it's allowing me to grow as a person, or is it taking me away and moving me in the opposite direction to where I want to be as well? So how does this have to do with gut health? And I've touched on it a little bit. And I've mentioned how, when you're, in that dorsal or even in that sympathetic state, sometimes in that extreme, that your digestion does slow down in some ways in that dorsal, and that can inhibit your digestion and absorption and things like that. But I want to take it from another perspective. And when you think about perhaps those choices that you make because you might be in a particular nervous system state, you might be somewhere along the ladder and you want to calm yourself. You want to get yourself up to that ventral. Perhaps you're in sympathetic and dorsal, and you want to get yourself up to ventral. And let's just say you just want to be calm. I just want to relax. I just want to be calm, but I want to feel connected. I want to feel creative. I want to feel loved. I want to feel abundant. I want to have that joy around me. So, and that's describing ventral. So what are the things that you do to get yourself into ventral? And I'm only going to really list the things that are probably, in relation to gut health. But, the standard things a lot of the time, and look, I don't want to be saying everything is bad, but things when you are too often and are pulling you away once again to that life that you want to be, or that person that you want to live by, your values. If it's pulling you away from that person or that life, then perhaps you need to look at it. And these are the things about how we use food so often as a reward. And rewards can be on both sides. You could be in that ventral state and you're celebrating, you're feeling great, and you're gonna, let's have a party, and we're gonna go out for lunch. I'm gonna go out for lunch, and I'm gonna have some alcohol. I'm gonna have let's have alcohol. And it's in this where we're making those food choices we're celebrating, and sometimes, it's just a sometimes thing, but sometimes that sometimes thing is becoming overriding and becoming an all the time thing. And it's, and that's where it can become an all the time thing, because it's also can be a reward when we're not feeling so good. I'm feeling stressed. So I'm just going to have something really quick to eat. I'm going to have some, something that's not very nutritional. I'm just going to have some toast. And then I'm going to celebrate with my friend and have some wine. And get my mood, because I've worked hard today. I've had a shit day. And I'm just going to, get things moving and make myself feel better again. So, it's going back to choices again, or I'm feeling down, and how often, I need to reward myself because I am feeling down, and a piece of cake will do wonders for that. And by all means, I don't want to suggest that those options are bad, but like I said before, and we've all done them. I've done them in every state. I've done them in every single state I've been in. I have used my food choices and my alcohol choices have been based on every of those states of the nervous system: ventral, sympathetic, and dorsal. I've used all of those methods. But when they become in excess and they are your go-tos for making yourself feel safe and feel calm, that's the point I'm trying to make. And taking notice of those choices. And more importantly, how we're responding when we are in a sympathetic state. Do you actually realize when you are in that state? Because our body is very clever at disguising it. And it's so clever, it's usually after the event, if it is a short-term event, that you reflect and you think, wow, yeah, I was a bit stressed. Yeah, I think I was a bit stressed. Yep, definitely a bit stressed because, I didn't eat very well at all. I hardly slept. Gee, I really pushed through it. And sometimes, look, that does happen. If it's, a couple of days and you just got to get through something, it's going to end. But when you have been living like that for a long time, that's where it's going to start to take effect. So perhaps just reflect on your own life and see how you respond to specific nervous system states in your life. And because really, if let's say you're not eating very well and you're just probably having, slow, those quick and easy takeaway, or really sort of not having enough vegetables or fruit or whole foods, that is not just not going to support your nervous system long term, but it's also not going to give you the nutrition and the perhaps even the protein or the amino acids that are going to support the nervous system long term as well. So so let's talk about ways, alternative options on how you can support your nervous system in other ways that are healthy for you. And quite often, identifying them is probably the hardest part, is actually knowing and actually being honest with yourself. Oh, yes, that is actually a go-to of mine. And is that helping me long term? It might be that in the moment feel good, like that glass of wine or two or three. But long term, or even afterwards, or even the next day, did that make me feel the way I wanted to? It's actually taken me 2 steps back. So there's some ways that you can actually support your nervous system. And look, and this might be different for everyone, but really the key thing is actually connection. Connection perhaps can start with yourself, honouring yourself, and being open and honest to the situation and how you're feeling. And, don't necessarily have to do anything about that just yet, but just acknowledging and observing how you are at that current state of time. And I've mentioned connection, and look, being surrounded by others, even just having that choice of being included in the community, even with family or friends, is really important. And it can be kind of hard when you're in a dorsal state and when you want to be left alone and not be around other people because it's a little bit too hard. So there are aspects that, you can just gently bring yourself back into connection with others, even if it is just online. Other aspects are just to go outside, grounding in nature. And you don't have to go on a long hike or anything like that, just stepping outside and noticing. I generally try and bring in the 5 senses. So, and that can be, you could be even doing it if you have a driveway or going to the letterbox or something like that, or taking the bin out. You can incorporate the 5 senses by just doing that one task. Driving in the car and you're at the stoplight. And what I mean by 5 senses, and I'm going to have to use my fingers here because otherwise I'm going to forget and miss one, is hearing. So hear the sound, what's around you. Maybe it's nature, maybe it's man-made, it might be traffic, it might be humans talking, but just noticing what sounds are around you. What you can see, so your sight. Look around you, look up, look below, look behind. Smell. So what can you smell in the air? Taste. You might be able to just taste what you just had for lunch or dinner or drank. It might be still in your mouth. And the last one is touch. So noticing the parts of your body that may be touching the earth, your soles of your feet. You might be holding onto an object. You might be sitting down. You might even feel your clothing on your body. Or you might feel your hair on your head or your neck, or you might have accessories on, you might have glasses. I tend to do my touch, perhaps maybe from top to toe, or soles of your feet, working your way up again. And these are aspects that you can it just brings in that mindfulness, and that can bring, funnily enough, just an appreciation of where you are right now. And it gives you a bit of a vulnerability as well of, this is where you are, and taking note of that. And changing, another aspect of changing your nervous system is saying that in your environment, and if you have that ability, is being in an environment where you feel safe and protected. I know that might not be a choice or be available for everyone, but it does make a difference. And even if it's, just as I said, if you're needing that nervous system support, if you have that ability, even just to change your environment just for a couple of minutes, that does center yourself. And the other word for it is self-regulation or self-soothing as well, is another name, fancy name, but let's just call it calming, rebalancing yourself, nurturing your nervous system, whatever you want to call it, self-care, fill your cup up, all of those. And that can be anything from reading a book, listening to music, cooking, doing a craft activity that you love, gardening, and And quite often these are the things that we push aside. I don't have time for. You know, it's unfortunate how things like, and I am going to mention meditation. It is unfortunate how, it's such accessible things that don't cost anything are often the ones that are taken off the list because we just don't have enough time for. Because you're feeling that at the time there's other priorities that are going on in your life. And it's making the time and sometimes having that accountability person as well. If you feel you need to create some movement like yoga or, it could be qigong or anything that brings you joy. It could be running, it could be walking, swimming, or whatever the thing that you like to do for movement. If you feel that, there is that thing that you want to do, but you're just not doing it, start small to begin with, a couple of minutes. And then, perhaps get an accountability buddy, a person that will, come by your house or meet up on Zoom and you do a class together or whatever it may be, or you join a gym where you feel, okay, I'm paying now, I have to step up, otherwise it's going to be a waste of money. But we've all done that as well, haven't we? I know I have. But it's could be really motivating to include that in your life. And there's other things like taking a bath, going for just having a rest, but just also remembering when it comes to napping and sleeping and things like that, that it's not something that maybe used as an avoidance, or that is slowly shifting to that dorsal nervous system where you are isolating and withdrawing yourself from others as well. And so that's an important aspect of gut health, because so many choices are really, we're unconsciously making decisions based on how we're feeling, and we want to just make ourselves feel calm and rested, and so therefore we're just filling our cup up with things that maybe not are healthy and beneficial for us long term. So that's probably where my message is coming across, is, are we making choices that are beneficial for us long term? Because everything is in moderation, as you probably have heard that many a time. So thank you so much for listening. And I will be bringing in guests, and there'll be a little bit of me sometimes. So I'm really looking forward to sharing lots of inspirational words of wisdom, I hope. And I really look forward to sharing this experience with you. Thank you for listening. And I will speak to you all again very soon. Bye for now.